Looks like you lost another one.
So I've always trusted what my instincts tell me. So let's flip forward. That was at 14. I followed my instincts. Here's a present day, but how I just follow what's going on. In 2000, I think it was 17, this maniac guy in Toronto decided he didn't like women, and he was mad at them because, you know, he was protesting that he was celibate. He was forced to be celibate because women didn't like him. Anyway, he got so angry he decided he wanted to kill a bunch of women, and he rented a van and he drove down the street and running over as many women as he could.
Oh wow.
20 minutes before that happened, I was across the road putting gas in my car, right where this guy would have been. And my plan that day was to put gas in my car and then go across the street and have lunch in one of the restaurants. I put gas in my car, and all of a sudden I decided to get out of the neighborhood. I don't know why, I just followed what I felt. 15 minutes later, this maniac had driven right by where I was, and he hit about 15, 18 women. Wow. And now that's an example of my trusting or just following what's going on.
Hey, yo, welcome to the Godcast.
Nothing is as it seems. Nothing. I mean, literally, nothing is as it seems.
We took authority for truth instead of truth as our authority.
The great deception is still to come.
Not every human you see is human.
A lot of us equate our value in life to the things that we have or the things we're able to acquire. And not the things that we're able to pass on.
But just sharing this story allows those people who are just starting out to recognize that there's somewhere to go.
Do you find solidarity within the differences, or do you find division within the similarities?
And it was a battle for my soul.
It's Nuck if you buck meets the gospel. What's up now?
Welcome to Godcast,
the Goodness Over Darkness podcast.
Here's your host, Immanuel Kingman.
It's showtime. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. I am your host, Immanuel Kingman, and here with me is the crystal ball reader, Mimi.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, my love. How are you?
Happy to be a grandma.
Yeah, Gammy and Pappy.
Waiting to see this little baby.
Yes.
In my arms.
The hospital will not allow us to go, so we have to wait for them to come home.
Oh, that's just making my head hurt worse. Let's not even talk.
All right. So our special guest today was Robert Lindsy Milne. And Robert is a psychic. He's 73 years old. He's been a professional psychic for 57 years. He has been very psychic his entire life. Since the age of like 5 or so is when he started realizing he was psychic. I think that you will all get a kick out of this episode. He has some great stories, and we exchange, I don't know about methods really, but we talk about how we do things and how we understand it. So it was a great back and forth conversation, and I really enjoyed the conversation. So I hope you guys all enjoy that. You can find him at his website, robertlindsymilne.com. His podcast is My Side of the Crystal Ball. You can check that all out. I want to thank you all for coming out. You could be anywhere in the world, and you have chosen to be here on the podcast with us. So I want to thank you for that. I would like you all to like, comment, share, subscribe, rate, and review whatever it is that your podcast listener allows you to do. It would really greatly help the show if you could do that. And it's just one of those things that would really be able to show your support. And I want to thank Paul for being the new Patreon member. So Paul just signed up just this afternoon. So thank you, Paul. It means the world to me that all these different people keep signing up and supporting the show. And we had the Bible study last night. That was amazing. So if you want to be part of the Bible study, just send me an email with the subject Bible study, and you will be able to be a part of it. I'll add you to the list, and I will send you the link each day, or each Sunday, which is Sunday 8 p.m. Eastern, by the way. So make sure you go check out our guest. Make sure you go to my website, immanuelkingman.com. That's IMMANUEL Kingman.com, to check out all the things I have going on over there, as well as the patreon.com/goodness over darkness. And if you're watching the video, you see it scrolling across the screen. And that will do it for the intro, but stay tuned for the outro. And without further ado, here's Robert Lindsy Milne.
Welcome to the Godcast. Cross up on my back, I'm slaying demons. It don't matter what you call that. Searching for the truth, facts are facts until they fall flat. It's looking like a story, man, it's all cap, but it's goodness over darkness, it ain't all bad. I'm at my maker, but I was called back. Immanuel, show my people they're under a spell. Heaven or hell is free will. I made my choice and now it's well with my soul. I pray the same for you as well. Welcome to the Godcast. Welcome to the Godcast.
Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a guest who was reading tea leaves before reading English. He grew up being psychic and now is a psychic intuitive counselor. He hosts the podcast My Side of the Crystal Ball. Everybody, welcome Robert Lindsy Milne to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Robert. How are you, my friend?
I'm quite well, and I really feel privileged to speak with you. I was reading a little bit of your history, and congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. The feeling is very mutual. There's a weird space that I'm in, that I was in the spirituality community, and then I was saved by Jesus. And for a little while, I was kind of turned off to spirituality, but now I'm in a more comfortable position of where everything is. And you're the first psychic I've had on since I've kind of transitioned away from that. And it's an honor to have somebody who is as doing this as long as you and as well respected as you are.
Thank you. Yes. Last January 17th, I celebrated 57 years of being a professional psychic.
Wow.
I was 15 and a half years old when I started working at a tea room. I just have to go back to you talking about Jesus. I'm not a particularly religious person, although I have respect for almost all religions, the ones that, are loving. So, and in my life, I have been attacked by Christians. Remember, in my country, doing psychic readings was against the law right up until 2018.
Wow.
So I have had, in the early days at radio stations, I had Christians protest me being on the air, trying to get me off. At a couple of live demonstration shows, a group of Christians showed up and shouted out and wouldn't let the show go on. And over the years, I've had issues like that. And I didn't particularly like Christians very much. And I had transferred my dislike of some Christians and Christianity to Jesus. And on the very first episode of my podcast, the guests were two guys, East Coast Mike and West Coast Mike. Both guys are they're older guys. They're ministers, and they do a whole bunch of other things, and they have their own podcast as well. And I was really afraid to go on with them. My publicist, Michelle, said, you should do this one. So I was doing the interview with them, and I then revealed what I had experienced by Christians. And these guys got very, very serious. And East Coast Mike said to me, he said, I'm going to come out of character for a couple of minutes and explain this to you. And he said, there are two types of church. There's the business church, and then there's the spiritual church. And he said, it was the business church that hurt you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the spiritual church didn't hurt you at all. And in that moment, I separated Christians from Jesus. And at the end of the show, I went away with a different relationship with Jesus. I just wanted to share that. I've never really talked about that on the air before.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's a good way of putting it, the business church, because the way that I describe it, I say like the fleshly or earthly church.
Yeah.
And it is like a church within a church. I get more hate from Christians than anybody else. But my audience, they are either people who are Christians who have questions that the church can't answer and they come here, or they're people who were hurt by the church and then they grew into spirituality and they still don't have answers to the questions, so they come here. Yeah. So I kind of try to bridge the gap between the two things, just to bring the truth in whatever way it is. And I don't even identify as a Christian myself to this day. I'll identify as a conspiracy theorist, but not a Christian, because the conspiracy theories theorists, they show me love. It's an interesting thing. Christians don't actually have me on their podcast to tell my testimony about Jesus Christ.
Well, we're equals on that one then.
Yeah. Yeah, they think that I'm a cult, that I'm new age because I have spiritual gifts. And I mean, you were born with some spiritual gifts, and that's really what I want to get into. Is people think that it's an evil thing, or that you have to be demonic in order to gain such, or not demonic, but you give yourself over to something demonic in order to gain such abilities. But you were a very young child when you learned of being psychic, right?
Yes. From a really early age, I sensed things, I knew things. And from the time I was able to speak, I said things that would get me into trouble. And one of them, the ones that stick out in my head, because it was a long time ago, the first one that I'm clear on, I was about 5, maybe 6 years old, and I had just come home from school for lunch, so it either would have been kindergarten or grade 1. And when I came home, I said to my mother, Grandma Harris died today. Well, Grandma Harris was my great-grandmother, who lived in England, and I lived in Toronto, and I'd only ever seen her once. So I said, Grandma Harris died today. And she got really angry with me and yelled at me and hit me for saying bad things. Flip forward to the next night, and you have to remember now, this would be 1955. So people didn't make long distance phone calls. There were a lot of people that didn't even have a phone. So news traveled slowly. The next night at dinner, myself, my sister, my mother, my father were sitting around, and my mother says to my dad, Grandma Harris died yesterday. And I thought that my father was going to get angry with my mother for saying bad things. And to my astonishment, they talked about it. I also would get into trouble, and the classic one was, Uncle Harold, that wasn't Aunt Sally. Who was that woman? Now that one did get me really hit for,
Oh, wow.
but I didn't know. I was innocent. I was just seeing things. I didn't realize what I was doing. I just didn't know.
Did you ask your parents or ask your mom, like, or dad, like, why did I get hit? But now you guys can talk about, did they even realize that you had said it?
They didn't realize that I had said it, and I was, genuinely concerned that I would get hit if I said anything after that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I learned to, CYA pretty quickly. Now, I still was seeing things and sensing. When I was around 9 years old, my father took me to an NHL Stanley semifinal hockey game, Boston and Toronto, 1957, and it was semifinal. The series was tied 1-1, and the game we were at, it was also tied 1-1 right up to the third period, and then the game went into overtime. When the teams came on for the first overtime period, I knew number 17 with the Toronto Maple Leafs was going to score. I just knew it. The game hadn't started. And Gary Eman, number 17, wasn't a star. He was, he was a run-of-the-mill player in the best league in the world, right? So he wasn't even on the ice when the game started. So he wasn't even the first stringer. So as they were stretching for the first overtime period, it got more and more intense for me. And it went from Gary Eman, I was attracted to, I knew he was going to score, to he has scored. All of that was going on in my mind, and I didn't really understand because the game hadn't started and there was a lot of buzzing. Anyway, the referee blows the whistle. Teams go to the bench. Gary Eman is not on the first line, so he's on the bench. The building, Maple Leaf Gardens, they turn the lights down. It goes like really quiet. There's like 20,000 people in the building. And I was feeling that Gary Eman had already scored, and I was holding it, and I just could not hold it anymore. So the entire building goes dark, and the referee's just about ready to drop the puck. And I jump up and start screaming and cheering for Gary Eman, who's not even on the ice. And 20,000 people turn and look at me and my dad, and he sort of put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Sit down," and I did, and the game started, and a couple of minutes later, Eman jumps over the boards. The guy passes the puck to him. He tips the puck into the net and scores the overtime goal. And when that happened, I was looking around the building, and the entire building, everyone was yelling and screaming and cheering. And I was watching the flash bulbs going off, and it was astonishing because I realized at that point, nobody else knew he was going to score. And it was at that point, I knew that I was seeing things that other people weren't seeing. And it was at that point, a lot of things fell into place. I also knew that somehow this was what I was going to do for the rest of my life as well.
Wow, that is incredible. So when you experienced this, did you see the play out in your mind, or did you just know the end result?
I just knew it. Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I'm not a mathematician. I don't get points for knowing how to know the score. I get all the points for knowing the score. That's it, right?
Right.
And the way I think is get to the point as quickly as I can.
Right. Okay. So that was something that just came to you. You were focused on the game. Obviously, you're there. It's an intense energy in the building. Now, what I pick up on when you are saying this is that, so I'll translate it to how I kind of started receiving things before they happened, was that I felt like thoughts were just dropping into me. Like I was connected to something higher than whatever our thoughts come from. Sometimes our thoughts come from up above, I feel. And it's like a cloud almost, and it just drops in. Well, everyone has their own individual cloud, but above that is like a shared cloud. And I feel like sometimes, because I would hear people say things in their voice seconds before they said it. I would hear it in my mind seconds before they actually said it. And it would be whole, 1, 2, 3 different people saying and replying to each other. And the whole scenario just like played out right before me. So what I'm kind of thinking is that you're picking up on this collective energy that's built around the stadium of all the possibilities that are going to happen. And for whatever reason, that was going to happen. And you tapped into that higher cloud that nobody else could tap into.
Okay. I'm a meat and potatoes kind of guy. So I'm more focused on doing it. I'm more focused on functioning as the psychic. I'm not really that interested in how or why, or I don't really care if I'm a clairvoyant or a channeler or an empath. I don't care. I look for reaction. I look for results. And when I'm doing readings, I'm focusing on what that person needs. And it's mostly been the way I think. So, and the way I think is, and it's a broader base than putting labels on doing an instinctive thing. I can't solve world hunger. I can't create world peace. I can't stop the war. I can't stop the Russians doing what they're doing. What I can do is help the person in front of me. And what I focus on is what's right in front of me. And it's a selfish thing, though. It's selfish because I want to see the results of the energy I put out. So I really love to see somebody grow, get healthy, learn, stop being afraid, feel safe. I love seeing that. And I'd love to see the results of that. So I don't think on a broad basis. It's helping the person in front.
Okay.
Okay.
That's very interesting. How things just come to us, and we all are very unique, and everybody is psychic. So I know that you've had some traumatic experiences. Do you think that the trauma could have, I'm sorry, the psychic abilities could have been your escape, that God gave you this as a young child so that you could escape these traumas?
We see things from a different perspective. My feeling about being psychic is that it is a natural ability that almost all mammals have.
I agree with that.
And so almost all, and I don't like to make absolute statements very often. I like my statements to be more open. As I'm getting older, I like to. So almost all mammals, actually almost all living creatures, have an awareness of the energy around them. Have you ever been somewhere, say at a restaurant or leaning up against a lamppost or something, and all of a sudden you turn and look and there's someone just been looking at you? Not a grope or, gunning you down or anything, but just they're looking at you. Or has there ever been a time you were looking at somebody and they turn and look at you? Well, that's being psychic. That's getting in touch with that instinct, that intuition. That part is a gift, but it's a gift that all mammals have. Most people that lean towards the spiritual life often have these types of interest, that psychic interest, and they develop it. But somebody could be very psychic and not necessarily spiritual at all. So being psychic doesn't imply being from my perspective, doesn't imply being spiritual. Okay.
Right.
And incidentally, when I talk about being spiritual, often in our society we think about being spiritual. Oh, I'm good, or this person is a spiritual person. They're good. Well, there was a guy named Anton LaVey. He wrote the Satanic Bible, and he had he had the Satanic Church of California. He was a spiritual guy, but I wouldn't want to hang out with his spirituality. So it's really important when talking about being spiritual, identifying that there's positive spiritual and there's negative, but it's spiritual nonetheless. And it's really important to be aware of those things. So being psychic isn't necessarily being spiritual, and being spiritual isn't necessarily being psychic, but you put the two together, you're getting close to walking on water,
Right. Okay. So maybe I worded it a little wrong. Do you think
you did it just perfectly? I did.
Well, and I love your answers there. But do you think it was unlocked to you at such an early age? Because it is, even though everyone is psychic to a degree, having the knowledge that your grandmother across the pond had died, and this hockey game, that is stuff that is pretty high level for a young child.
It certainly was.
So do you think that was unlocked to you so that you could escape the traumas that were going on?
Okay, so did I use it to escape the traumas? I used it to, save my life. Okay, so I used it that way, and actually have my whole lifetime. So up until recently, I've been a one-man show. I've worked through my career throughout my life. I've just worked on my own, and I haven't had a lot of contact with psychics. And since I've been appearing on podcasts, and since I have my own podcast, I've noticed a pattern. And every psychic that I meet and have met have gone through really heavy duty, terrible traumas. We all do it. It's part of the training for the job, as it were. And it's that training, that trauma that we have is what keeps us aware, keeps us on guard. And we who have been abused, and me physically, sexually, emotionally, experiencing that, my instincts were honed for my survival. And I'm there may be a possibility that that's the same for you too.
Yeah.
Okay. I can yes. And part of the job, you see, when I say it's part of the job, in order for me to do a reading for somebody and understand them, when I look into the eyes of a person that's been abused, and I speak to them with the feeling of someone who has been there, survived it, thrived because of it. And when I share that sensitivity, and I do, and I feel it, it helps that person heal. And often what happens is I say things because I understand what it's like from the inside out, not reading it in a book. I understand it. And when I express those feelings, it helps my client identify what they're going through, and they feel safe and they express it. So,
yeah, I totally agree. The vulnerability of sharing. And I usually, when I talk to my clients, instead of being like a therapist and be like, well, it's what's going on with your mother, I'm telling stories, and it's just things that come to me that I start to talk about for whatever reason, this trauma, and I have many, like,
I saw.
yeah. So when something just comes to me and I start to tell a story of something that they can relate to, then all of a sudden the gears start clicking and they tell me something they open up about, and then they're like free from whatever it is
Absolutely.
that was holding on to them. It's the vulnerability that we have that
Absolutely.
really gets it out.
So, I turned 73 in the summer, this coming summer. And looking back on the abuses, the atrocities that were inflicted upon me, the results of what happened caused me to look inside more than what most people would have. And from around 16 or 17, up until about 3 months ago, I have been in some form of therapy or another. I have spent my whole life healing from these injuries, these wounds, these hurts. Along the line, I've helped a lot of other people heal and get beyond. And at this stage, looking back, if I were shown what would happen because of what was inflicted upon me, I'd sign up again. I'd do it because
That's amazing.
Because the man that I became because of that would have never happened if I had it not occurred.
Right.
I wouldn't have said, "Oh, beat me. I love it." No.
Right.
But what I went through, and what I experienced and what I came through and evolved and grew from was that.
Right. I think that the traumas break us out of the matrix mindset, and that we would have just been, if we didn't go through that, we could have just easily have been a mindless drone, and going through life. Mimi.
I agree with that. And when you remove the, seeing a psychic or going to counseling, when you remove that and you find people that have had the same experience as you've had traumatically, that is where you really find your healing, because you finally find someone that you can really open up to, and they really get it, and they're not fishing for like, well, maybe it's this and maybe it's that.
Right.
Yeah. So I do agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just see it as training for the job.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you get information, when you just know something, is it the same as a thought? Is it different in any way? Like when you're intuitively picking something up, even accidentally, so not necessarily when you're trying to, but when it happens, is it the same as when you have your thoughts, or is it different?
Yes and no. Yes, it's different, and no, it's not. My awareness, my instincts are on all the time. And even when I'm not conscious that they're on. And I'll give you an example. And I have a sense of not a sense. I trust my instincts. When the first time I was 14 and a half, I was homeless on the streets in Toronto. During the winter, it was like November to April. I was living in an alleyway. Well, not quite. I was too smart to live in an alleyway, but I say that I was homeless. I didn't have my own home. It wasn't until in late April that the police caught me and took me back home when I was that time. So my instincts, survival instincts, were honed on the street, and in that time when I was on the street, I was always offered, when there was a problem to be solved, I was always given the opportunity to use my intuition, psychic ability, or do an illegal act or an immoral act. There was no right or wrong. in that test, or there was no right or wrong in how I got out of it, but the way I handled it determined which direction my life went.
Right.
And almost always I chose the intuitive psychic way. There were a couple of times where I had to do an immoral act to get out of a snowstorm, but I never stole anything or did anything illegal. So I'm trying to remember why I went down that path. So I've always trusted what my instincts tell me. So let's flip forward. That was at 14. I followed my instincts. Here's a present day, but how I just follow what's going on. In 2000, I think it was 17, this maniac guy in Toronto decided he didn't like women, and he was mad at them because, you know, he was protesting that he was celibate. He was forced to be celibate because women didn't like him. Anyway, he got so angry he decided he wanted to kill a bunch of women, and he rented a van, and he drove down the street and running over as many women as he could.
Oh, wow.
20 minutes before that happened, I was across the road putting gas in my car, right where this guy would have been. And my plan that day was to put gas in my car and then go across the street and have lunch in one of the restaurants. I put gas in my car, and all of a sudden I decided to get out of the neighborhood. I don't know why. I just followed what I felt. 15 minutes later, this maniac had driven right by where I was, and he hit about 15 or 18 women.
Wow.
And now that's an example of my trusting or just following what's going on.
Right. Okay. That's an incredible event that occurred right where you were. I mean, that's really mind-blowing that, you know, you would be there for something. I'm sure it's a historic type of thing in the
It
area.
certainly is. It certainly
Yeah.
is.
So, wow,
So now I didn't question why my energy or
Right.
why I was following that energy line. I just did it.
Right.
Now, if that only would have happened once, okay, that's been my whole life.
Right.
Now, the same thing though is following those lines. It leads me into other things that I can actually affect or become a part of as well.
Right.
And I'll give you an example. So this one day, my office used to be in downtown, in Midtown Toronto, and my dentist was in downtown Toronto. And this one day, I was going to the dentist, and instead of driving through the city because traffic's really bad, I decided to take the subway. There were two ways: take the subway right across Bloor Street to Yonge Street, and take the Yonge Street subway straight south, and that would drop me right off in front of the dentist's office. The other way, you take the subway to St. George Street and that's before Yonge, and then you go downstairs to another platform and take the southbound train. But it adds 4 extra stops, but it would take me right to my dentist's office as well. But it was 4 extra stops. And I used to always go, that's to Yonge Street and then Yonge Street South. This particular day, I don't know why, we pull into the St. George station, the doors open and I get up and walk out. I don't know why I did it. I just did it. I went downstairs to the northbound platform. And as I got to the platform, subway train came in. I thought it was going south. Anyway, the subway comes in and it stops. I go up to the door. As I'm getting to the subway door, it starts to close. And I stepped back. this woman came running by me to get on the train, even though the doors were closing. And she put her foot inside the door, and the doors closed on her foot. And the train started moving. And it was right in front of me. So I bent down, put my hand around her leg, and I pulled her leg but below her knee, and I pulled her foot out of her shoe.
Oh,
and
wow.
then I pulled her back, and I let go. And I heard another subway train coming in the other side of the platform. Anyway, I let go of the woman, and her shoe was bouncing between the subway car and the platform. And she bent down to get her shoe. And as she was bending down to try to catch her shoe, then there was the big space between the two different cars. And as she was bending down, she lost her balance and was starting to do one of these into the subway between the two cars, and subway trainers. And I just grabbed her, put my arms around her waist. I pulled her back, fairly long way away from the edge, and I let go. And I then realized I was on the wrong platform. This was a northbound train, and I needed a southbound train, and my train had just come in on the other side. So I was running over to the other side, and I looked back, and there were some people helping her, and I jumped on the subway train and drive away. And about 2 stops later, I started thinking about it and said, I think you just saved her. Wow. So those things happen quite regularly.
Wow, it sounds like you were her guardian angel for that several moments. I mean, you hear stories of that. People are like, I mean, Mimi has her own story that's similar, where someone just comes in, saves you, and then they're gone. It's like God was just using you.
Would you, Mimi, would you share? Is that too personal a story?
No, this was when I was younger.
You're still young.
Well, I was very young. I think I was maybe 7, I think.
Yes.
And we were all going on the family. We were going on the boat to go fishing and crabbing. And we were filling up the boat with all the supplies, going up and down the dock. And at the time, the ramp down didn't have any railings.
Mm-hmm.
And someone walked by me with the cooler, and I got knocked into the water underneath the marina, and I got hooked on a nail underneath the dock. So even if I could get up, I couldn't get up. And someone who was just loading stuff into their boat had seen what happened and dove in and, saved me. And I remember him saying, I just got this watch. I can't remember if he said it. It's not waterproof, or thank God it's waterproof, one or the other, but it's something about his watch is all I remember. And then that was it.
Wow.
Yeah, no one else even noticed. She said that.
Yeah, no, none of my family noticed until he pulled me out of the water. I'm like, yeah. And then I just wanted to go home and never go on the boat ever again.
Yeah. And it certainly wasn't your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, there are definitely several times things like that have happened.
Wow. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. Okay. So now you've been doing this for a long time. Is this something that you need to practice to hone in on, or is this something that's just always available and you're as good no matter if you practice or not?
I've never met anybody that was really good at something if they didn't work hard at developing it. Everyone, we all have a special talent for something. But whatever that special talent is, if you don't work at it, develop it, you're not going to go anywhere with it. I knew what I was going to do at a young age. The second time I was on the street, I was 15. The police brought me home in the spring, and I turned 15 in the summer. And then in that autumn, I left home again, and I never lived at home with my family again. So when I forgot where I was going with this. What was I just talking about? Being on the street. Oh, yes. I started working at the Cozy Tea Room when I was 15 and a bit. And I worked there 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. And I worked there for a little over 5 years. And when I decided to leave the tea room and go on my own, I had heard if when a young man becomes a priest, he makes a vow to say a mass every day of his life. And I thought, if I'm going to do this for my lifetime, then I'm going to do at least one psychic reading or practice doing psychic readings every day of my life. And I went 30 years without missing a day of practice or doing a reading. Yes. And even now today, I still practice every day.
Okay, so how do you practice? Do you just hone in on an individual and
I focused inward on a feeling, and I often just let my mind wander out and pick up senses and energies. That's usually how I do it. But if somebody happens to phone me and I answer, and I'm going to practice, I'll often just do a reading.
Oh, nice. You were going to say something,
Yeah, I
maybe?
had a question.
Yes.
What is the difference between reading tea leaves and when I was growing up, we would go to somebody who would read coffee grinds, like Turkish, Armenian coffee grinds.
Right.
So what is the process? What is the difference?
I just have to tell you that here's how I ended up being at the tea room. I heard that if you worked at, no, remember, I was homeless again. I heard that if you worked at the cozy tea room in the afternoon, you would get a sandwich, cup of tea, and some cookies. And if you worked at the cozy tea room doing readings in the evening, you'd get a hot dinner, tea and cookies, and you'd get paid at the end of the shift. And I applied there, and I went in to do to get the job. And the way I got the job, was I had to do a reading for the owner, and I had to do a tea leaf reading and a card reading because that's what they did. That's how they got around the law. They would put a sign up and say, tea leaf and card readings are done for entertainment purposes, and they were selling the sandwiches. So I had never read tea leaves, and I really didn't have any experience with cards. So when I sat down to do her reading, I just picked the teacup, picked it up like this, put it in front of me like that, and I held it, and I pretended I was looking in the teacup, and I just looked at her and talked and did what I would normally do for a reading. And then when I did that for a while, then I picked up the cards and I put the cards down. I had no idea what the 7 of hearts meant or the ace of diamonds. I didn't know, but I would say stuff, and I'd say, and this card here indicates, maybe I didn't use indicate. I might not have known what that word was then, but I would incorporate it in what I was saying, but I was really being psychic. I was just adding the cards because I had to get the job.
Yeah, make it look like a parlor
So the
trick.
cards and the tea
That's right.
were just a show, and the instinct
That's
is what.
right.
Okay.
That's right. And from that time onward, I still never.
It's very honest.
Yeah. Well, I've never used a medium.
Yeah.
I've just done it myself.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The way that I started developing my abilities was I would just imagine what somebody would say in a specific circumstance, and this whole situation would just play out in my mind. And then little by little, it started playing out in front of my face as I'm imagining, I'm with somebody and I'm imagining how they're going to react to what just happened. Well, then they react that way. And it was like, whoa, this is very weird. And it's happening like often. I have multiple things going on in my mind, and it's not the easiest to concentrate specifically on one thing when there's scenarios playing out in your mind that you want to pay attention to, because I could be in conversation with someone and I'm hearing their words. I really am, but there's something more important happening in here that I need to hone in on, and it's a difficult thing to do too at once. is this something that you have had to face?
Wow. Yes, I have. Well, I do it differently, but there's something I just want to go back to that you were saying. I hope you don't mind.
No.
You were talking about the information that you pick up in the situations that you're in. Have you, it's in your head. Have you ever considered all the things that you said you were doing and thinking about? Have you ever considered getting on a timeline and following the timeline to see where it goes? So you know how you talked about practicing and visualizing, and if you jump on a timeline and follow it, you could be opening your mind to some like pretty groovy things.
What do you mean by jumping on a timeline?
Oh, just follow. Oh, okay. Well, using the same technique that you use now, just simply imagine the energy moving forward and the inevitable result or end result of the thought that you would just come up with or the situation that you were in.
Okay.
Did that make sense to you? I forget people.
I've done that. The whole situation just continues
Yes.
on, and then you're just like jumping into that space essentially.
Right.
Well, I haven't been able to. Well, I'm not that I haven't been able to, but the majority of time when that happens, when the thought keeps going and going, it shuts off, and it's not at all what I have going in my mind. And it's usually when I open my mouth and tell somebody about it, then it's like I'm shut off from it for whatever reason.
Okay. So what you're talking about, the way you're thinking, is the way I practice.
Okay.
All right. So those things are not meant to go outside of me. In that moment, it's practice.
Right. Okay.
It's expansion. So in my work, what I do is tune into people. Now, a lot of psychics, they tune into the future and stuff. I look at someone's life. Now, it's taken a lifetime to get here. I see most people, when I do a reading for them, I see their life from conception to completion.
Wow.
But I just started practicing. I would see a situation and then let my mind go on into the future and see the things that could happen to that being or that truck or that situation. So one time a friend of mine called me up and said, Robert, I'm thinking of investing in this special store. Do you think it would be a good venture? And this is really simplistic. And I said, well, yeah, it is going to be a really good venture. It will start off with one store, and within about a year, there'll be 3. And then I just followed what the energy went with. And then after I gave him all that information, he said, I don't want it to go that far. And I said, okay, well, then don't do it.
Because it's going to lead that way.
Yeah, well, then don't do it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But don't ask me the question.
Right.
So I just instinctively follow where things are going to go.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of how I do too. I just allow it. But like today, I'll just use example today.
Yes.
We became grandparents today, and at 11:04.
Whoa.
Can't zoom by that.
Excuse me. Yeah. You're not. That's not going to slip by. You became grandparents?
Yeah. Well, it's my stepdaughter. It's her daughter. She had a son this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been a good day.
So how will they address you, Grandma?
I'm going to be Grammy. Well,
Grammy?
since I'm already Mimi, I was going to keep that, but then I was like, that's too weird. I want a
Grandma
special
Mimi?
name. So I'm going to be Grammy.
That's a good one.
And I'm going to be Pappy.
My My father's father
We
was
are
Pappy.
Grammy and Pappy.
My
Not going to be.
grandfather, my father's father was Pappy. My father's mother was Nanny. My mother's mother was Grandma.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
Yeah. Couldn't be Nana because my
Congratulations.
daughter's name is Brianna,
Oh,
and we already
thank you.
call
Yeah.
her Nana, so couldn't be
Yeah.
Nana.
And
Well,
Brianna calls her grandfather Poppy, so I wasn't going to be Poppy, so I'm
yeah.
Pappy.
We got
Oh, that's
special
a
names.
cool name. That's really cool. Congratulations to you
Thank
both.
you
Thank you.
very
Wow.
much.
Yeah, thank you. So at 11:04, all of a sudden in my mind, the baby's born. They're writing down the birth certificate on the birth certificate. 11:04 a.m. I'm hearing the baby cry. I'm hearing my stepdaughter. She is in tears, just overjoyed. And the whole situation plays out. And then I talk to Mimi an hour or so later, and I say, "What time was the baby born?" She goes,
10:53.
"Okay." She said, "Yeah." She told me 10:30 something on the phone. Though I'm like, but I distinctly heard 11:04 because I looked at my clock and my clock's at 11:05, but I'm hearing 11:04. So it happens like that, and I didn't say anything to her about it, but it happens to me where a whole scenario plays out, and it's not the result that the reality that I'm in actually is, and that happens probably half the time or so. I don't know. It's out of my control. Like I'm just driving and then this scenario plays out. I didn't have any inkling of when or how or anything like that. So it's just strange.
Okay, so I just want to see if I get this right. You get this awareness about things, and you play it out in your mind, and it is a reality. It's just a reality that you're not in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's
Yeah.
what it sounds like.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it happens.
It's like
Is
a
that what
different
it is?
timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's okay. Good.
Yeah. And I mean, it's weird, but yeah, stuff like that happens all the time. I mean, it was a whole real situation to me. Like I
Yes.
wanted to call her up and be like, "Hey, you're a
It's
grandma."
11:04.
Yeah,
Right.
11:04, but
Sure.
I would have been wrong. It was
Huh.
actually 11 minutes wrong, but
Right. Hmm.
it's yeah, that stuff like that happens to me, and that's where I don't try following it, because when I do, I have this whole scenario that I'm expecting to happen, and then it's just wrong. So when I focus in on something
Well,
and I
excusez-moi.
get it, okay,
Excusez-moi. Well,
Hmm.
it's not wrong at all. It's just a different reality.
right, okay.
Okay.
So
Which, yes.
I was gonna say, so that kind of leads me to, uh, is it a free will choice? Because I know choices can be seen, whereas predestiny can't be seen. Is that something you've experienced?
What, yes. Okay. So during this would have been during the Calgary Winter Olympics. So it was sometime in the 1980s, and it was in the prime of my career. At the end of the Winter Olympics, like a couple of days after, this woman came to me for a reading. She left Calgary and came into Toronto, and she was one of the TV producers in the sports department for CTV, and they were broadcasting the Olympics. And she had just finished that assignment. She came to me for a reading. And I did this absolutely magnificent, incredible, great reading. I remember her very clearly. And I gave her reading, the recording, and she left and she rode away on her bicycle. The very next night, and in Canada, the national news comes on at 11 p.m. That's the way it is. Anyway, so the next night, watching the news, Lloyd Robertson was at the time the news broadcaster in that era, and he was doing this obituary, and they showed a picture, and the obituary was for the woman that I had done a reading for the day before. And she was riding her bike home and got hit. Well, in Toronto, we have trolley cars. We call them streetcars. She got hit by a streetcar and got killed.
Wow.
On the way home after I did her reading. Now, I was shocked and stunned. How could I have missed it? How could I have missed it? I was devastated. And it really freaked me out for a long, long time. And I walked the floors. I questioned myself. If you're so bloody good, how come you missed that one? What the hell's the matter with you? It was awful. And then, as I was assessing and thinking one day, I said, if something can be seen, it can be changed. Destiny cannot be changed. Therefore, destiny cannot be changed. It also then cannot be seen.
Right.
And it was her time. And that's the only way I've been able to come to terms with that incredible miss.
Right.
Now, though,
Interesting.
Right? Now, the next one, though, is you could say the purpose of life is to experience all things on all levels, not the purpose of life. And the only rule with that is what we do one way, we must do equally the opposite. Okay, so the purpose of life is to experience all things on all levels. Because we can't experience all things on all levels in one lifetime, we have other lives,
timelines,
other reincarnations. But there is also a theory that in this existence, you, me, that there are alternate realities, that every possible thing, I don't know what just happened here. Every possible turn on. Okay. I don't know what just happened here. So the concept is that for every possible situation, there is an actual reality happening right now. Right. So in one reality, we missed the show completely. In another reality, we all hated each other's guts. In another reality, we really loved each other. And every possible situation is created in the reality, all happening right now.
Right. Yeah.
That's the concept. And we can choose whatever reality we want to live in.
Right. I totally agree with that. I've experienced when I first started spiritually waking up, what I started experiencing was I was seeing timelines shift off of people at different times. I would see it was like if you do like a slow motion, like somebody's like trailing through, all of a sudden, like I see the trail go, and then the person's just still here. And that, to me, that was the first time I saw that timelines, that reality shift, and that all possibilities, it's always a fork in the road. And every time we come to it, I think that they've already are built, essentially, like the roads are already built, and we come there, and our choices, like you said earlier, determine what we experience then after. It's our free will, but then that does lead to destiny, that no matter what road you take, you're going to end up at some spots that you're going to hit no matter what.
Okay.
Like a little ant farm.
Pardon?
It's like a little ant farm. Just trails that some lead to nowhere, some lead to where you have to kind of come back and go the right way. Some lead to specific points that you're always going to hit. Yeah, like a labyrinth, sort of.
Well, in the overall scheme of things, there is no right and there is no wrong.
Right.
There's experience. And the rule with experience is what we do one way, we must do equally the opposite. And we have free choice and free will to experience what we want. And realizing that whatever it is that we get or whatever it is that we want, we will do the opposite. And this one theory is that, and it's all happening right now, every single past existence and every single future existence and every reality of each existence, all are happening right now.
Yeah.
That's what they said.
Yeah, it's a crazy. Consciousness is a very not understood thing. I don't even want to say misunderstood, just it's not understood. And I don't think it can be. It's the wholeness of everything. It's just we can't as
Fathom.
one, as one being, as an extension of consciousness, we can't comprehend the entireness of it. So I got two more questions for you here going out. Now I heard you, and I know you said you don't do general psychic statements or readings, but I heard you on a podcast in January that someone asked you about what you think 2022 is going to be, and you mentioned a possible war or rumors of war with Russia. And
Yes.
you actually said March, April, and May, and then
Did I?
lo and behold, we're in March, and what's going on there? So, is there anything that has changed in your opinion of what's going to happen the rest of 2022, which is very positive, I might add to everybody, that it's not going to be the end of the world. It's going to change. But has anything changed in your understandings?
So I just have to explain that. That podcast with Jeff Maher, it was a really good podcast. It's one of the best ones I've ever been on. Of course, next to this one, of course. But and Michelle, the woman that is the producer of my podcast as well as a publicist, she contacted me and she said, "Could you fill in on this show tomorrow?" And I said, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll be glad to." And I didn't do any research, and I just went on. And I've never really been someone that is interested in world forecasts. And when I went on, we were having a good conversation, and he said, "Well, could you tell us about what's going to be happening?" So I just started talking about stuff.
Okay.
And I haven't even listened to the show, so I'm not quite sure what I said. My essence, what I think I believe, what I said at the time, I believe is that the beginning part of the year, and into the spring, is going to be the most intense, and there could indeed be a war with Russia. I also said that the second part of 2022, and I was specifically talking about America, but the world, but America, and for whatever reason, in the autumn of this year, Americans, your attitude towards each other is going to start becoming nicer or softer, and kinder. Now, don't expect everybody, to be, singing Kumbaya, but the intensity of this energy right now, when it finally gets released, Americans are going to start being nicer and kinder to each other again. There's always going to be the extremists, but overall, that is how the end of 22 will happen, in terms of the way America feels. It's also a period where this will sound, this is just coming into my mind. So the American military is going to be expanding and shrinking. So how can that be? Or shrink and expand? And what's going to be happening as a result of this war? The way it will be thought of in battle, they're going to change. Oh, sorry, you guys. The Americans are going to change the emphasis on different types of fighting and a different method of handling battles and wars, and they'll be accenting newer types of technology and machines that are much newer and very different than what has been traditional up until even right now and over the next month or two. So the
frequency weapons.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's what I've been picking up on lately, is that there's
Okay.
going to be some kind of but go ahead, you can continue on.
What I was seeing is that the U.S. and I suppose NATO and the allies, I think there's going to be a different focus on the equipment they use going into battle, and not throw everything away, but just add on to. And I think that Mr. Putin is in like some really deep doo-doo, and he could have a heart attack or something, or stroke, or or get indigestion or something.
Bioweapon.
Right. And I really believe that we're looking at coming into the end of April. There's going to be some revolt in the Russian military. There's going to be some kind of revolt or protest. At that time, there will be like 10,000 Russian soldiers that got killed. And there's already 6,000 or 7,000. So that's going to be coming out, So Mr. Putin is going to disappear, perhaps, or eventually what's going to happen is there's not going to be any food in Russia. There's not going to be any money in Russia. And he's going to take the heat for that.
All right, very interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So, final question here. The way I like to go out with all of my guests is I like to ask, what is your go-to grounding technique? Now, in this world of psychicness where you have multiple things happening in our heads all at once, how do you keep yourself grounded to you and your life and doing the things that make you feel good?
Well, I've been like the way I am my whole life. So I'm used to having a defense or protection around me. I'm used to that. And I'm usually pretty good at it. I'm not quite sure what you asked again. Could you just ask me that question one more time?
Your go-to grounding technique.
Used to be a bottle of whiskey. Don't drink anymore. So I often just talk with friends, or I take my 3 golden retrievers out for walks. That's something that's really grounding. If I'm really stressed, feeling frightened, nervous, scared, what I do is I have this little protection ceremony, and it's really simple to do. I visualize inside my solar plexus a speck of dazzling pure white light, and every time I inhale, the speck gets bigger, and every time I exhale, it gets purer. And then quickly it starts to fill up all through my abdomen, this dazzling speck of white light that every time I inhale, it gets bigger. Every time I exhale, it gets purer. Pretty soon what happens is that dazzling speck of white light becomes a ball. It completely fills my body cavity, and then it starts to expand outside my body. All the while, every time I inhale, it gets bigger. Every time I exhale, it gets purer. Till eventually what happens is this dazzling ball of white light has completely encapsulated me. And what's happening is I'm taking that dazzling, pure white light, most powerful energy in the universe, from the inside out, it cleans our energy to begin with. It protects us. And as it comes out of our body, it also cleans our aura as well. And it adds a circle of protection.
All right. Go ahead.
You could take that ball and make it as big as you want. You just have to believe the effects. So you could put yourself in it. You could put the room that you're in it. You could put the house that you're in it. But what happens after a while, it starts to get so big. Can you maintain that power to keep that extended energy?
Right.
This is just a survival or protection.
Okay, that is
That's
a great
your-
answer. What?
I've done a meditation like that before. What is that called when you're in that
Active dynamic meditation?
final
No.
ball? What is that called?
Your Merkaba?
Orgasm?
Yes.
What? I'm sorry.
Merkaba.
Oh, Merkaba, aka orgasm. Okay, yeah, sure, of course.
Yeah. All right, so we will
Should
say
I
goodbye.
be saying those things to grandmothers? So sorry.
Oh yeah.
My ears are too old for that.
Do you want to let the audience know where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on my website, robertlindsymilne.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And of course, my podcast is called My Side of the Crystal Ball.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being a guest, and we'll say goodbye to our audience. You can hang on for a moment, and everybody who's tuned in, stay tuned for the outro, and we will talk to you there. All right, everybody. So you just heard our interview with Robert Lindsy Milne, and it was a very fun conversation. It was very informative by someone who's been doing these psychic types of things for 57 years professionally, and he went 30 years without missing a day of practice. That's just really incredible. So Mimi, what did you think about this episode?
When you were talking about running a scenario through your head and then not wanting to say anything because it may be wrong, and he said that you just might be on a different timeline. The thing that I was getting was Jesus from the book of John when he was saying, my time has not yet come. Like, I don't do this because my time has not yet come. Yeah, that's what kept coming to me.
That's very interesting that would be popping up to you.
Yeah.
That's how Jesus speaks to me all the time, is when like a random thought just pops in my mind and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, I get what you mean now.
And I really understand what he was saying about when he like his practice was like putting on a show, basically. Like, he would just tell you what he's seeing and thinking, and getting, instead of reading the cards or reading the tea leaves. That was just like, the magic show, and the real performance was inside, and he was just spitting it out. And that's, I remember you saying that sometimes there's a whole bunch going on up here when there's things going on right in front of you. And that's what happens to me when we're sitting and doing podcasts. It's like I'm looking at the screen and I'm hearing everyone, but sometimes there's like other stuff going on. And that's where I get my best stuff is literally right here. This is where I get my best stuff. This is my place.
Well, the key to getting both at the same time is to do away with the external influences. Well, yeah, you will be eventually. But for me, when I was doing it, when I smoked weed, it was really strong. So I had to stop doing that and stopping all the external stuff that was amplifying it. It really helped me zone in on what's going on in both places at once. It's not the easiest of things to do, obviously.
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's hard to listen to someone speak while I'm listening to something else, sort of.
Yeah.
Like while I'm trying to process what's coming over on one side and looking at the screen and trying to process what's coming in on that side.
Yeah, well, doing the podcast has really got me pretty good at it. And it helps me see in my mind more, because I'm not trying to hear the situation. I can just see it playing out, and I can see it in my mind and stare at the screen or stare at the camera. That doesn't really matter, because a lot of the time when we're doing the podcast, I'm looking at the camera anyway. Like sometimes
And
you'll
I'm looking at the screen.
Yeah, anyone watching, you'll see my eyes will go from looking, way over to the side because I'm looking at the guest because I want to see their different movements and motions. And then sometimes I look at Mimi and I, which you can see I'm looking a little more straight on. And then sometimes I look directly at the camera. So at different times, I'm looking at different places because it's helping me in whatever reason. I like to see people's mannerisms when they're moving about. When Mimi's speaking, I want to look at her, and I don't necessarily want to just look over at her. I can just look at the screen, all sorts of different things. But sometimes when I'm staring at the camera, it's like I'm just facing the camera and I'm watching something up here, and it happens quite often, actually. But yeah, it was great being able to speak to somebody because one of the abilities that I have is I take on the abilities of people I speak to. So, not necessarily that I'm going to take on his abilities, but just that it would
does
help
help.
amplify.
It's a helpful
amplify mine.
tool to perfect the skill that you have.
Yeah, to tighten in.
I like that he was giving you tips and tricks,
Yeah,
a little bit.
Tighten in on certain aspects of it.
Mhm.
And it was interesting when he was saying certain things at the end, which is not something he typically does, the broad, generalized, predictions of what's to come. I mean, it blew my mind when I heard from doing my research for this interview that back in January, he said, yeah, we're probably going to be at odds with Russia in March, April, and May. And then he said something's going to happen around July, August, that's going to really bring America together, which I also see that. But I also see when he was talking about Putin having something happen to him, I was getting Biden. Something's going to happen to Biden.
That's funny that you say that because I was like, I've been getting information of like
And I'm getting a heavy yes now.
Yeah, like the opposite of like Russia's not going to be out of food and out of money. Like it's going to be somebody else.
Well,
I don't know. We'll see. I guess we'll see.
I'm getting a heavy. It's heavy, real heavy right now. Yes, that it's going to be. That may be the unifying factor, and that it's not going to be. Yeah, like you were saying, that it wasn't going to be. I was getting a no when he said some of the things about Putin, and that's not to say that I'm right. I don't know. That's just what.
Yeah, I'm not just saying during this conversation. I mean,
Right.
for weeks I've been thinking like all these, when all the fingers are pointed one way, it's usually somewhere else that you should be looking.
Right. And I mean, I don't know. I could see it very well. The scenario he played out, I could see like, yeah, that could very well be the case. Now, I don't know about the number of soldiers that have died.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's a large amount if that were to be true.
I just got major.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah,
That's a
I
major
saw it.
shake.
So is that true then?
Who knows?
Holy Spirit, is that true or is it not true?
Don't make me do it again.
Well, I because I said if it were to be true, that's when you got the chills. So that's kind of like an up in the air
now that I'm
question.
aware of it, I'm holding it. See, I can't do that because then I like kind of stop it. You know what I mean? Like when you're aware of it, you can compress
just have
some
to be
things.
free flowing.
Yeah, we'll have to move on from that. I
Right.
would like to move on from today's show so I can get back on video call with my beautiful, beautiful grandbaby. I just want to be back on the call. I know
Yeah.
it's this table. It stinks.
Yeah. Well, okay. So
It's shaking my
our
microphone.
grandson Ezra Lee.
Ezra Hewlin Lee.
Ezra Hewlin Lee. Yeah. Sorry. He was born this morning and he's healthy, and his mother Brianna is healthy.
And adorable.
Yes, yeah, they were so adorable. We got the FaceTime
He's
when
got
I was
little
at work.
fat cheeks and long little toes.
I heard my
can't wait.
I heard my FaceTime what's it called? Facebook Messenger was going off, and I was like, oh, I already know who it is. Because usually, like, I kind of get annoyed when something like that's going off, but I was like, oh, I know what this is, and I pull my phone right out. And like, yep.
Like we have to call you too.
Yeah. So Mimi, she pushed through. She had a strong headache
I
today
still have one.
and still has one. So and I told her she didn't have to sit in on this, but I'm glad she did. I love when she's here, and it always helps me. And she told a great story, which, I couldn't have told because it was a story that happened to her. So everything happens for a reason, and I'm glad she
Slowly
powered
but
through.
surely, you'll get my stories here and there sprinkled through all the podcast episodes.
Yeah, you just have
It's
to listen to
easier
all
when
of
I'm
them.
like kind of on the spot and I have to tell something than it is to like interview
Plan it.
myself and bawl my eyes out or something.
Yeah.
I feel like this is getting easier.
It definitely is. And
Mhm.
everybody loves you on the show, and I'm so glad that you're
Well,
as
thanks.
big a part of it as you are.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, so that's going to do it. Make sure you guys please like, comment, share, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening to this at. It greatly helps the show. If you could go to the patreon.com/goodness over darkness, you could sign up and support the show financially. That would be a great help to us. You can also donate on PayPal or Venmo. I keep that in the description of all my episodes just in case someone wants to. It's greatly appreciated if you do. If you don't want to become a recurring Patreon member, but also go to my website immanuelkingman.com. That's IMMANUEL Kingman.com. And there you can check out all my guest appearances, all the different articles that I write, which I'm about to post another new one, which is going to be a mind bender. Andy Rouse and I are going to cover it this Friday on Worship in the Storm. You don't want to miss that one. This is a mind bending article that really it helps you understand all of creation, essentially, of the biblical narrative, anyway, of how things happen with God to where we are. And it's it's just amazing. So go check out all of that stuff, all the photos on there, as well as all the different episodes. We have 100. This is the 112th episode, plus 10 bonus episodes, plus Worship in the Storm, plus the Human Race, plus several of my guest appearances I have uh, on my audio feed. So, I have over 300, probably close to 400 hours of content that I give away for free. So go check all that out. The YouTube channel, Goodness Over Darkness. Make sure you go subscribe. If you're just listening to this, you will definitely want to be part of the YouTube channel. All right, so that's going to do it, everybody. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
From Pappy and Gammy. Bye.
Bye-bye.